So this is my last visit to Whitby this year. It's the end of 2024 and I've visited Whitby 14 times in 2024, which is the most ever in a year for me. So you're probably thinking, why don't you just move there, Jason? Well, that's a good question, and that's a story for another day. But in the meantime, let me share with you all the times that Whitby made me smile in 2024. So 2024 hadn't been underway long before I was visiting, 13th of January, and it was a cold and blustery day as you'd expect for winter by the coast. I just love these quaint little shopping streets, the little details. There's a series of these amazing wire sculptures, and we're going to come back later and see this fisherman. And honestly, I didn't expect to see so many people crabbing at this time of year. That's a really good spot. Always see people catching so many crabs. It looks amazing. Show a detail shot, cheers. That's a lively one. Now, there was a little bit of colour in the sky, which was hinting at what was to come later. Stick around. I was mainly here to record my sights and sounds of Whitby video, and that's been pretty popular. The link is in the description below. Love a trawler boat. Look at that scene, oh my god. You can see why I love the place, can't you? So magical. Such a beautiful day, honestly. I never get tired of going back time and time again. And here's his view, isn't he lucky? And as I went back to the car to go home, that was the scene that I said goodbye to. I didn't have too long to wait for the next visit, which was February the 17th, and the drive into Whitby from where I live in Nottingham is incredible, always beautiful. And then you hit this bridge over Whitby, and that is when my shoulders really sink down and I relax, and I know that I'm back in my spiritual home. Now then, I was testing out a new camera that day. That's my mate's Lewis and Rich with me, by the way, and I don't think I liked this vlog because it never saw the light of day. Of course, a walk down the 199 steps always has to be rewarded with a cream and jam scone at the Abbey Steps tea room at the bottom of the steps. Now, I'm more of a jam and cream scone kind of guy, as we've already seen, but the smokehouse here, the Kipper smokehouse, is absolutely incredible. That black tar, or whatever it is, all over the interior, absolutely incredible. Great big stalactites of it.
Cold smokes, and they aren't actually cooked.
You do fry them?
You fry, grill, simmer in hot water, tin foil.
I could watch the waves crashing all day long. Starting to lose count now of how many times I've been out on the yellow boats. The Summer Queen is amazing. Definitely recommend a trip out to sea on one of the boats if you find yourself in Whitby. Now you see the Abbey Wharf's distinctive glass balcony from the far side of town. Self-service pints here. I'm pretty rubbish at this. I'm fairly sure I got Rich or Lewis to pour mine. This is the Screaming Tunnel over on the west side of town. Worth a walk down there. The view that greets you at the end is incredible. And we're topped off the day with a pint or two at the Whitby Abbey Brewery before heading home. I stayed in nearby Scarborough from the 3rd to the 10th of March in 2024, and it was pretty cold and windy all week, if I remember, but I did get up to Whitby twice that week. One of those day trips out to Whitby was when I was filming my top 5 views of Whitby, but I wasn't happy with it. I mean, look at the focus, it's nowhere near on me, so I came back the next day, I think, to refilm it. I ventured down the further end of the marina, a spot where fewer tourists seem to venture, and I came across this incredible weathered old wooden boat. I absolutely love textures like that, they make for great photographs. As I got ready to head back to the hotel in Scarborough, I got excited by this potential sunset, but it didn't amount to much in the end. Anyway, back the next day to refilm my top 5 views of Whitby because I wasn't happy with yesterday's footage, but yesterday's weather was so much better. That is sod's law. Oh, and that's my concentration face, by the way. Apparently I always look like I'm scowling. I can't help it, that's just how I look. Oh my god, that view though, that is incredible. Although it didn't end up being my top view in my video of the top 5 views of Whitby. I love popping on my waterproofs and getting down as close as I can to the waves and the sea. I just find it really relaxing and I could watch them all day. So what's your favourite thing about Whitby? Pop a comment below. There was a lot of sea spray in the air which gave the place a real mood. I'm not really a sitting on the beach kind of guy. This is more me, this whole moody kind of gothic look. Oh yeah, the RNLI lifeboat station was open for visitors to wander in, which I found fascinating, and there were so many suits I found that unbelievable. You could really smell the rubber in there. You'll see a lot of these little cuties around the piers and the harbours. They're called turnstones and you'll recognise them due to their distinctive white bellies and orange legs. Here's me announcing my #1 view in that video I was telling you about of the top 5 views of Whitby. It really is a stunning place, particularly when there's a sunset. One last glance back at Whitby before I head back to my hotel in Scarborough. So towards the end of my week in Scarborough, the weather had started to turn considerably windier and colder. So I headed up the road to Whitby in the hope of getting some of those huge waves crashing over the piers, you know, those kind of iconic things. But that wasn't quite happening. Whitby Goth Weekend, which happens twice a year. This is the April one, and that always makes me smile. It's such a spectacle. Black ice creams all around for us guys, Rich, Lewis and myself. Turns your lips a bit black. There's me meeting death, and here's a bit of my soul leaking out apparently. And then we called in at the RNLI museum and I had a bit of a pretend to drive around the harbour. Finishing the day with a drink up at the brewery near the Abbey. Sunday 12th of May, what a gorgeous day that was. The day before I'd been down at Benton Cliffs near Bridlington to photograph the puffins with a mate of mine, but the thing that brought me to Whitby this day was to film the first National Fishermen's Remembrance Day. There were various services around the UK and Whitby was one of those locations where they were holding it. I wasn't the official photographer, but I was the only one there with a decent camera, so of course I let them use my footage. This was the first bit of sunny weather I'd seen at the coast this year so far. And plenty of other people had clearly had the same idea to come and enjoy the sunshine and some fish and chips in Whitby that day. I will literally never tire of gazing out on Whitby scenes and watching fishing boats come and go. The narrow shopping streets on the east side of town have a really special charm. I mean, you see the sign for the Black Horse pub there, that was open when Shakespeare was a lad. So this was shaping up to be one of those longer days. I'd set off from home really early to catch the fisherman's service. Weather was gorgeous and the tide was really far out, so I decided to walk up the beach towards Saltwick Bay. If you fancy a bit of fossil hunting, it's really easy on this section of the beach. A lot of it is shell bed and you'll find these ammonites, or there might be the impression of where the actual fossil was, I'm not sure, but anyway, they're great to see. And then a little further along the beach you have the haunting sight of one of a number of shipwrecks in the area. Having just attended the Fishermen's Remembrance Service, it was poignant to see such reminders of the savagery of the sea. I know I keep saying I like the stormy and moody weather, but on days like this Whitby comes even more to life when a gentle sun falls on the east side as the day draws to a close. It is so gorgeous. And so the sun smiled warmly on yet another soul-enriching day in Whitby. I'd been going on for ages about going to see the Spanish galleon which was going to be docking for a week or so in Whitby, and I booked in advance for me, Lewis and Rich. Of course, just because it's summer doesn't mean it couldn't rain all day. It is Britain after all. Anyway, I was well excited touring this replica Spanish galleon called El Galeon Andalucia, and I got quite wrapped up in investigating all the rooms and the details. Lewis and Rich, however, had other plans and soon disappeared. It turns out they weren't enjoying the rain for some reason, and I later found them on a different boat which conveniently had a bar. This guy had the right idea. Books, cameras and rain gear are the things I blow my money on. Seems quite a gap in visits from the 14th of July when I went to the Galleon to my next visit on the 31st of August, but in between I'd had 3-day trips to Skinning Grove, which is near Saltburn. I'd also been to Scarborough again, and I'd had a beautiful summer scorcher of a day in wonderful Robin Hood's Bay. One thing that always makes me smile is going out to sea on one of those yellow boats, and I'm always amazed at the number of people fishing off the end of the pier. It looks really fun and relaxing. Now there's a view I never get tired of. You may have seen one of my previous videos where I'm talking about moving to Whitby, and you might be wondering, if you visit so often, why not just move there? Well, that is still a hope of mine, but sometimes life stuff comes along, so I think there'll be a bit of a delay, but one day it will happen. Not such a long gap between visits, as I returned with Lewis on the 15th of September to do something which has been on my bucket list for a long time. Whale watching is one of those things I thought I'd have to travel to some far-flung country to see, but it turns out that whales are quite frequent visitors to these waters. It was 2.5 hours on one of the yellow boats, and that was for about £22, which was amazing value for money. Apparently they've been seen humpback whales, but we saw minke whales on this particular trip, and they're the most commonly seen species of whale on these whale watching trips from Whitby. Little did I know at this point, but I'd be having a much closer experience with the minke whale later in the year. I stayed in Scarborough the first week of October, and that was a great base to launch into some great day trips around and about, including stays, and of course I had a couple of trips to Whitby. It's a bit of a ritual now for me to have a few days away at the coast for my birthday. I had an early start on October the 4th to catch the sun rising over Whitby, and I think this day is up there as one of my favourite days out so far in Whitby. I had a good wander around the harbour and marina, as I always do, and I was out with my camera appreciating the colours and the textures and going in with my camera for details. There's something about the texture of lobster parts and ropes and the colour of oil skins that I just really love. I had a really long day here this particular day, and what a stunning day it was. And another open day at the lifeboat station. Not to be missed, always grab the chance. If you see a lifeboat station open, grab the opportunity to go inside, it's fascinating. Back out in the fresh air, and the glorious weather continued all day. It was absolutely beautiful. And I started walking down the beach in the direction of Saltwick Bay again. Passing the shipwreck again. This is the MV Crete block, which is a ship made out of concrete, believe it or not. On and on I went further than I'd ever been before, because the tide wasn't due to turn for a few hours. Past this large rock jutting out into Saltwick Bay, and I kept hearing and seeing little rock falls, and I've got to confess, I've always wanted to witness a big landslip and catch it on camera. Apparently they're fairly common on our ever-eroding coastline. As I headed for the cliff path, I saw a large something, and though I suspected what it was, I hoped I was wrong. Unfortunately I wasn't, and it's sad to be getting so close to a minke whale under these circumstances. A dead whale took away the smile from my face for the first time in all of my visits, and I made my way up the cliff. Heading back to town, I could now gaze down on the route I'd taken, and I watched the sea begin to roll in and reclaim the beach once more. It's a small thing in the grand scheme of things, but today was a lesson in venturing that little bit further than you've been before. You never know what you might see. Are they wondering at the magnificence of that view? I like to think they are. As I said goodbye to Whitby for another day, the sinking sun gleamed upon the east side of the River Esk once more. Sunday, November the 3rd for the world-famous Goth weekend, which was a day trip with my mate Lewis. It's clear that Saturday is the busier of the 2 weekend days, so it's worth bearing that in mind if you're visiting, but I definitely recommend visiting. It happens twice a year, in April and late October into early November. It's always a visual spectacle. You have a better chance of warmer weather in April, but there are no guarantees. It is Britain. And as I've said, I never tire of watching the fishing boats coming and going. I find everything they do fascinating. It's great from a photography point of view. Whitby sparkles like a jewel at night. Lewis and I had some chips at the board inn, and then we headed for home. December the 7th for the fabulous Krampus run. This was the 10th anniversary of its appearance in Whitby. Totally recommend a visit for Krampus. Thank you very much. However, the weather was about to take a turn for the worse. We knew Storm Darren was coming in. In fact, I was looking forward to it. Any excuse to film it and wear my new orange oilskin. And now for my final visit of 2024. Surprisingly sunny. You'd almost think it was spring if you'd not felt the biting cold, that is. It was really surprisingly busy though. And when you look at scenes like this, I think you can understand why I love the place so much. You know, it doesn't matter when I visit Whitby, there's always people catching crabs in the harbour, like it's the easiest thing in the world to do. More fishing boats, I could film them all day long, as I've said many times. In fact, why isn't there a job called official fishing boat photographer or something like that? That would be perfect for me. As the sun starts to set in Whitby, it illuminates the east side in a very special way as it sinks, making everything golden and leaving a warm feeling inside. And then night falls on my last visit to Whitby in 2024, and as I returned to my car, I saw a shooting star. So I made a wish. Can you guess what it is?